Hello everyone. I'm going to make this just a generally public broadcast regarding Defeat Autism Now, or DAN. I've said before that I believe that they are extremely overzealous about how they want to treat autistics, and they can do a lot of harm. I actually have some personal stories about that. However, since we're talking about anecdotal evidence a lot, I'd like to also say that I don't believe, anecdotal evidence is something that's going to be all that important or interesting per se right now. Anecdotal evidence, there's another name for it, and that is testimonial. And actually, that's what a lot of infomercials use, is testimonial. Now, it's not totally invalid, it's better than nothing, but it's still, if it's coming from a organized body collecting a group of individuals to create antidote, then that is very suspect. And what I see a lot at DAN conferences are sometimes doctors who will defeat autism at all costs, and they want to defeat autism at all costs, the cost also including the life of the child. They don't see that as they don't see safety as an issue too much of the time, at least. You have autistics, for example, that are very catatonic, and I'll demonstrate what that means. And you have some that are very hyperactive, and they're rocking, and I know one that likes to plink, and they do that all day long. And there's some that are very, very hyperactive. But Dan will treat all these children as one size fits all. They see a spider as a six-legged creature, essentially. They do not see any of these autistics. They just, demonstrate as being having any difference at all. So a shot that might help one will not necessarily help the other. In fact, it could kill the other autistic, and this is the problem. Dan does not care about that. And if you look at chelation treatment, some children are very low in things like they're maybe low in a natural mineral like calcium. You chelate all the calcium out of their body, or potassium, and their heart's going to go into arrhythmia. It's going to cause heart attack, myocardial infarction. So, I mean, they may be educated, they may have a doctor's certificate, maybe some of them don't. Some of them I've heard have been removed, long removed from the medical community because of their activities in DAN. And many of them don't have their medical licenses suspended, basically, for a long time, and are still practicing in other places as DAN doctors because they strongly believe in getting rid of autism any way possible. They see it as autism, and that's the problem. They don't see the human behind it. They don't see the autistic. They want to defeat, if they can just take the human factor out of it, they basically put a sack over the head of the autistic, and then they can start shooting at this bag labeled autism. And that's where we start getting into things like eugenics, Peter Singer type of reasoning, where basically all the weak people of the earth, all the weak races of the earth need to be removed, that kind of thing. So now some parents are just so grumpy and frustrated, maybe they're not. A lot of people just simply aren't fit to be parents. But do we need to listen to their advice? If we're functional parents, do we need to listen to their anecdotes? What works for one problem with anecdotes is what works for one does not work for all, and so that's another danger. You don't know real causes with anecdotes. You can put together a pattern. You can start a hypothesis, but anecdotes are not. The reason they're not science because they don't have any control on it at all over observation. There's no technique. There's no routine. Routine's been proven. The scientific method works over testimonials time and time again. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of studies just studying that. So I'm not saying put blind faith in studies, or someone else had written about it. Human bias. There can be cooked studies. There can be studies with skewed results. You don't want to always believe everything you read on a study either. But you could call it junk science or what have you. But it's you just need to be very critically evaluated. One of the first things I can tell junk science is they use a small sample size. Right away, red flag goes up. I reject the study. Sometimes they don't use sounds. They don't calculate error at all. Or they jump to a conclusion and they don't base their conclusion based on the results of their study. Sometimes, if you were to really interpret the results of their study correctly, you might actually reach an opposite conclusion. And a well-written conclusion is very important too. That's a very subtle but clever trick. Some people who cook studies, that's what they do. Or you take a look at the whole picture, or you include all the results, and you can see. Sometimes there's just so many tricks people do. You just got to be very careful and listen to a lot of the peer reviews. That's a good thing to do. Just read other people's comments on these studies. People who are studiers themselves, usually they have something good to say. You don't always want to listen to organized bodies like the CDC per se, or organizations that have something to say. Although they may have scientists that have done what I'm talking about, and that's when you do want to listen to them and actually read what they've done. Don't just take their word for it. Anyway, you have to go through that to pretty much understand it all. But I tell you what, if something smells like a alternative quackery, it probably in all likely is. And so you just have to have a very good nose for snake oil junk. You just have to do your reading, do your research, understand the history of a particular procedure. Why is it being promoted? Why does a doctor think there's a link to how it could cure some aspect of autism that maybe not even all autistics have? See, that's the problem. That's the problem. They just assume everyone's the same. I'm not saying there's all these subtypes, but it's like everyone gets a collection of different things in their trick-or-treat sack, pretty much, when it comes to having this condition. So anyway, I didn't want to make this too long. I'm signing out, and please leave a comment. Thanks.